Today I married a 22-year-old Emily, my upgrade from my ex-wife Renee here. She was just too dull for me. Greg's voice boomed across the crowded restaurant as he gestured towards me with a smirk. But hey, everyone makes mistakes, right? I froze, the wine glass slipping from my trembling hand as the blood drained from my face. The stunned silence of our table was deafening, broken only by the clattering of silverware and hushed murmurs from nearby diners. Greg's words hung in the air like a thick fog, suffocating me with their audacity. My mind raced back to the beginning, when I had first met Greg at a tech conference. His charm and confidence had been intoxicating, and I fell hard for his smooth talking and promises of a future together. Our courtship was a whirlwind, and before I knew it, we were exchanging vows bound by the sacred ties of marriage. But those ties quickly frayed as Greg's true colors emerged. The man I had fallen for was slowly replaced by a cold, dismissive stranger who seemed to take pleasure in belittling me. I found myself constantly questioning my own worth, walking on eggshells to avoid his scathing remarks. As time passed, the emotional distance between us grew, and I began to suspect that Greg's late nights at the office were more than just long work hours. The lingering scent of unfamiliar perfume on his shirts, the furtive glances at his phone, all signs that I couldn't ignore any longer. With a heavy heart, I started documenting his behavior, carefully collecting evidence of his infidelity. Every missed call, every suspicious text message was meticulously recorded, building a case that would eventually shatter the illusion of our marriage. Greg's words echoed in my mind, a cruel reminder of the depth of his betrayal. But somewhere beneath the anguish, a spark of determination ignited within me. I would not be the victim in this story. It was time to take control and expose the truth, no matter how painful it might be. In the days that followed Greg's humiliating outburst, I found myself retreating into a numb haze, grappling with the harsh reality of his infidelity. Everywhere I turned, reminders of his betrayal taunted me, from the lingering scent of his cologne on our bedsheets to the sickening messages I discovered on his phone. Sarah, my ever-loyal best friend, was a constant source of support during those dark times. "He's a lying snake, Renee," she spat, her eyes blazing with fury. "You deserve so much better than that sorry excuse for a man." Her words resonated deeply, fueling the fire within me. I couldn't let Greg simply discard me like yesterday's trash, not after everything we'd been through. With Sarah's encouragement, I started meticulously compiling evidence. Phone records, credit card statements, anything that could expose his duplicitous ways. Finally, one fateful evening, I decided to confront him head-on. Greg had just returned from one of his late nights at the office, his shirt crumpled and his hair disheveled. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady despite the churning in my gut. He barely acknowledged me, dismissively waving a hand as he headed for the fridge. "Can it wait, Renee? I'm starving." "No, it can't wait." I slammed the folder of evidence onto the counter, startling him. "Look at these, Greg. Look at what I've found." His eyes narrowed as he flipped through the pages, his expression shifting from confusion to realization. "So you've been spying on me? Real classy, Renee." "Don't try to turn this around on me," I snapped. "You're the one who's been lying and cheating. With Emily, no less." A sly grin crept across his face. "Ah, yes, Emily. Now there's a real woman, not some uptight nag like you." The venom in his words stung, but I refused to back down. "How could you do this to us, Greg? To our marriage?" He let out a derisive laugh. "Our marriage? Please, Renee. That ship sailed a long time ago. I want a divorce, and you're not going to stop me from being happy with Emily." In that moment, the final shreds of my love for Greg withered away, replaced by a burning desire for retribution. He thought he could simply cast me aside and ride off into the sunset with his young mistress? Not on my watch. As Greg stormed out of the room, I clutched the folder close, a determined glint in my eye. This was war, and I intended to emerge victorious no matter what it took. With Greg's bitter words still ringing in my ears, I knew I needed to take action. Sitting idly by while he trampled over our marriage vows was not an option. It was time to fight back, and for that, I needed an ally in my corner. Lisa Turner came highly recommended by a friend, a no-nonsense divorce attorney known for her tenacity. Our first meeting left me feeling empowered, as she laid out the legal avenues I could pursue. Greg's infidelity gives you grounds for a fault divorce, Lisa explained, her steely gaze fixed on me. And with the evidence you've gathered, we have a strong case for securing a sizable settlement. A weight lifted from my shoulders. Finally, I had a path forward, a way to make Greg pay for his misdeeds. Lisa wasted no time in filing the necessary paperwork, setting the wheels in motion. In the meantime, I continued documenting Greg's exploits, paying close attention to his finances. It didn't take long to uncover a trail of overspending and questionable purchases. Expensive jewelry, lavish dinners, all likely ploys to woo his young mistress. One fateful afternoon, as I was restocking our fridge at the local grocery store, a familiar figure caught my eye. There she was, Emily, draped in an ostentatious fur coat that likely cost more than my car. Her saccharine smile turned sickly sweet as she sauntered over. "Well, if it isn't the scorned wife," she cooed, her voice dripping with condescension. "Greg told me all about how you've been making his life miserable." My hands clenched into fists as I fought the urge to lash out. "You have no idea what you're getting yourself into, Emily. Greg's just using you." She let out a derisive laugh. "Keep telling yourself that, dear. Greg loves me in a way he could never love a frigid shrew like you." Before I could respond, she was gone, leaving a trail of her sickly sweet perfume in her wake. My blood boiled with rage, fueling my determination to take Greg down once and for all. With Lisa's guidance, we crafted a meticulous plan to expose Greg's deceit and ensure I received every penny I was owed. Financial records, witness statements, even private investigators, no stone would be left unturned in our pursuit of justice. As the court date loomed closer, I found myself filled with a sense of purpose. Greg had made the grave mistake of underestimating me, and now he would face the consequences of his actions. I was no longer the meek, downtrodden wife he had taken for granted. I was a woman on a mission, and nothing would stand in my way. With Lisa's guidance, I knew it was time to turn up the heat on Greg. No more playing nice. He needed to feel the full weight of his actions crashing down on him. The first salvo came in the form of a certified letter delivered straight to Greg's office. I couldn't help but smirk at the thought of his colleagues whispering behind his back, speculating about the impending legal drama. True to form, Greg responded with fury when he called me later that evening. "What the hell is this, Renee?" he snarled into the phone. "You have no right to do this." "I have every right," I shot back, my voice steady and unwavering. "You brought this on yourself, Greg. Did you really think you could just discard me like trash and ride off into the sunset with your little mistress?" His silence spoke volumes. For once, the smug, arrogant Greg seemed at a loss for words. From that point on, it was a whirlwind of activity. Lisa and I burned the midnight oil, poring over financial records and gathering every shred of evidence we could find. Witness statements, private investigator reports, even footage from security cameras, nothing was off limits. With each new piece of damning information, I felt a surge of vindication coursing through my veins. Greg had truly underestimated me, and now he would pay the ultimate price. Lisa proved to be a formidable ally, her legal expertise guiding me through the often confusing maze of divorce proceedings. "There are different types of compensation we can pursue," she explained one evening as we strategized over takeout containers. "Alimony, of course, to ensure you maintain your standard of living. But we can also go after a lump sum payment, as well as a portion of Greg's assets and investments." My head spun at the prospect, but Lisa's confidence was contagious. For the first time in months, I allowed myself to envision a future without Greg's shadow looming over me. As the court date drew nearer, the tension was palpable. Greg's lawyers tried every trick in the book, from character assassinations to spurious counter-accusations. But Lisa was a rock, her unwavering resolve a beacon guiding me through the storm. Finally, the day of reckoning arrived. I took the stand, my heart pounding in my chest as I recounted the sordid details of Greg's betrayal. His lawyers tried to rattle me, but I stood firm, bolstered by the mountain of evidence we had amassed. When the judge finally rendered his verdict, the weight that had been bearing down on me for months seemed to lift. Greg was ordered to pay a substantial settlement, including alimony and a sizable portion of his assets. As the courtroom cleared, I caught a glimpse of Greg's contorted face, twisted with rage and disbelief. But for once, his tantrum didn't faze me. I had won, and nothing could take that away from me. The weight of the past year seemed to lift from my shoulders as I stepped out of the courthouse, the crisp autumn air filling my lungs. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I was free. Free from Greg's grip, free from the turmoil that had consumed my life. As I finalized the divorce paperwork and transferred the settlement funds into my own account, a sense of vindication washed over me. Greg had tried his damnedest to break me, but in the end, I had emerged victorious, with my dignity and self-worth intact. Of course, Greg couldn't let me savor the victory without one last temper tantrum. As I was packing up the last remnants of my life from our once-shared home, he barged in, his face contorted with rage. "You think you've won, don't you?" he spat, looming over me with clenched fists. "Well, this isn't over, Renee. You haven't heard the last of me." I met his gaze with a calm, steady stare. "It's over, Greg. I've moved on, and so should you." Without another word, I brushed past him, leaving him to stew in his own bitterness. In the weeks that followed, I found solace in the simple pleasures I had long neglected. Leisurely walks in the park, catching up on my reading, and reconnecting with old friends. It was as if a weight had been lifted, allowing me to breathe freely for the first time in years. Sarah, ever the supportive friend, insisted on treating me to a much-needed getaway. "You've been through hell and back," she said, wrapping me in a warm embrace. "It's time to treat yourself." And so, with my settlement funds safely tucked away, I booked a solo trip to the coast. A chance to reset and rediscover the woman I had been before Greg's toxicity seeped into my life. The salty sea air and the rhythmic crash of waves against the shore worked their magic, slowly but surely washing away the lingering ache of my shattered marriage. As I strolled along the sand, the sun's warmth caressing my skin, I marveled at the newfound freedom I had fought so hard to reclaim. No longer was I beholden to Greg's whims and moods, walking on eggshells to avoid his wrath. I was my own woman, master of my own destiny, with a world of possibilities stretching out before me. In those quiet moments of solitude, I found myself reflecting on the path that had led me here, the heartache, the betrayal, the grueling battle for justice. And yet, through it all, I had emerged stronger, more resilient, and more fiercely protective of my own worth. As I watched the sun dip below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink, I made a silent vow to myself. Never again would I allow someone else to diminish my light. The future was mine to shape, and I intended to do so on my own terms, without apology or regret. The months following my divorce from Greg ushered in a newfound sense of peace and self-discovery. I threw myself into my work, relishing the freedom to chase my ambitions without the weight of a toxic relationship holding me back. It was at a local charity gala, surrounded by the city's elite, that my hard-earned tranquility was shattered. As I mingled with colleagues and potential investors, a familiar figure caught my eye across the crowded ballroom. Greg, looking every bit the smug philanderer, with Emily draped on his arm like a gaudy accessory. I felt my stomach lurch as they approached, Greg's self-satisfied smirk seeming to grow wider with every step. "Well, well, if it isn't my dear ex-wife," he proclaimed loudly, drawing the attention of nearby guests. "Renee, meet my radiant wife, Emily. We're expecting our little bundle of joy soon. Looks like everything is going right for me." Emily flashed a sickly sweet smile, her hand resting on the swell of her pregnant belly. In that moment, a wave of nausea washed over me, threatening to send the contents of my glass tumbling to the floor. Before I could react, the words spilled from my lips, fueled by a sudden surge of righteous indignation. "Congratulations," I replied, my voice dripping with thinly veiled disdain. "How many men have fathered your supposed bundle of joys, Emily?" The smile melted from Emily's face as she recoiled, her eyes widening in shock. Greg, ever the clueless fool, simply furrowed his brow in confusion. "What the hell are you talking about, Renee?" I leveled my gaze at Emily, unflinching. "You heard me. Or did you think your little secrets would stay buried forever?" With that, I turned on my heel and strode away, leaving Greg sputtering in my wake. The weight of Emily's deceit, the tangled web of lies she had spun, no longer burdened me. In that moment, I felt a sense of liberation, a vindication that transcended the petty drama of my failed marriage. In the days that followed, whispers rippled through the social grapevine, rumors of Emily's sordid past, a trail of broken hearts and shattered lives left in her wake. It seemed that even Greg's wealth and status couldn't shield him from the consequences of his misplaced trust. One evening, as I was unwinding after a long day at the office, my phone rang with an all-too-familiar number. Greg's voice, laced with desperation, crackled through the line. "Renee, we need to talk. Please, just hear me out." I almost pitied him in that moment, a man brought to his knees by his own hubris. But the scars of his betrayal ran too deep, and I had no intention of reopening those wounds. "Greg, it's over," I replied, my voice steady and resolute. "Whatever mess you've found yourself in, you'll have to sort it out on your own." His pleas fell on deaf ears as I ended the call, a newfound sense of closure washing over me. The path ahead was clear, unburdened by the baggage of my failed marriage. In the days and weeks that followed, I watched from afar as Greg's world unraveled. Emily's web of lies lay exposed, and the once charming businessman found himself shunned by the very social circles he had once dominated. As for me, I strode forward with my head held high, reveling in the knowledge that I had emerged from the ashes of my former life stronger, wiser, and utterly vindicated. As I left the charity gala that fateful night, a peculiar sense of satisfaction washed over me. For too long, I had allowed Greg and his scheming mistress to dictate the narrative, to hold the power over my emotions. But in that moment, the tables had turned, and their carefully constructed facade was crumbling before their very eyes. In the days that followed, the whispers grew louder, spreading like wildfire through the social circles Greg and Emily had once dominated. It seemed that Emily's past indiscretions, her trail of broken hearts and shattered lives, had finally caught up with her. Reports trickled in of scorned lovers emerging from the shadows, each with their own sordid tale of Emily's deceit. Fake identities, fabricated pregnancies, entire relationships built on a foundation of lies. It was a twisted web that even Greg, in all his arrogance, couldn't ignore. The once charming businessman found himself increasingly isolated, his friends and colleagues distancing themselves from the unfolding drama. Gone were the days of backslapping camaraderie and exclusive country club memberships. In their place, a deafening silence, punctuated by sidelong glances and hushed whispers. It was during this period of social exile that Greg reached out to me, his voice tinged with desperation. "Renee, please," he implored over the crackling phone line. "You have to help me. Emily, she's not who I thought she was." I couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh at the irony of his plea. "And you think I owe you anything, Greg, after everything you put me through?" His silence spoke volumes. For once, the smooth-talking charmer was at a loss for words, his silver tongue rendered impotent by the weight of his own hubris. "I'm sorry, Greg," I continued, my voice brimming with a newfound confidence, "but you made your bed a long time ago. Now you get to lie in it." With a decisive click, I ended the call, severing the last remaining tie to my former life. Greg's world was crumbling around him, and I had no intention of getting caught in the rubble. As the weeks wore on, the once powerful couple found themselves increasingly ostracized, their social status reduced to little more than a punchline. Emily's web of lies lay exposed, her carefully curated persona unraveling thread by thread. And Greg, the man who had once so callously discarded me in pursuit of his own selfish desires, was left to pick up the pieces of his shattered life. The lavish lifestyle, the adoring social circle, the illusion of power and prestige, all of it had crumbled in the wake of Emily's deception. For my part, I watched the drama unfold from a safe distance, a silent observer to the karmic retribution that had befallen my former tormentors. There was a certain poetic justice in their downfall, a vindication that transcended mere words or actions. As I moved forward with my life, building a thriving career and nurturing healthy relationships, I couldn't help but feel a sense of gratitude for the trials I had endured. They had forged me into a stronger, more resilient woman, one who would never again allow herself to be diminished by the likes of Greg or Emily. In the end, their twisted games had only served to illuminate my own inner strength, a resilience that had carried me through the darkest of times and into the light of a new, fulfilling chapter. And for that, I would be eternally grateful. 2 years had passed since that fateful encounter with Greg and Emily at the charity gala, 2 years of healing, growth, and hard-earned triumph. As I stood in the sleek, modern office that had become the headquarters of my burgeoning tech startup, I couldn't help but marvel at how far I'd come. What had once been a mere glimmer of an idea, a passion project born out of the ashes of my failed marriage, had now blossomed into a thriving business empire. My innovative software solutions were in high demand, attracting clients from all corners of the globe and securing my financial independence for years to come. Gone were the days of walking on eggshells, of letting Greg's toxic presence dictate my every move. I was the master of my own destiny now, calling the shots and shaping my future with an unwavering determination. As I navigated the bustling office, exchanging friendly banter with my dedicated team of employees, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and accomplishment. This was my legacy, built from the ground up through sheer grit and resilience. Of course, the road to success hadn't been an easy one. There had been countless late nights, nerve-wracking pitches to skeptical investors, and more than a few setbacks along the way. But each obstacle had only served to fuel my determination, reminding me of the depths I had been forced to climb from. In stark contrast to my own ascent, Greg's fortunes had taken a decidedly different turn. Word had trickled down through the grapevine that he was now persona non grata in the business world, his once sterling reputation tarnished beyond repair by the fallout from Emily's deception. Jobless and shunned by his former social circles, Greg had become little more than a cautionary tale, a reminder of the perils of unchecked arrogance and poor judgment. Part of me almost pitied the man, reduced to a mere shadow of his former self. Almost. The truth was I had long since moved past any lingering bitterness or resentment towards my ex-husband. His actions, while reprehensible, had ultimately served as the catalyst for my own personal revolution, forcing me to shed the shackles of my former meek existence and embrace the strong, self-assured woman I had become. As I stepped out onto the balcony of my corner office, taking in the breathtaking view of the city skyline, I couldn't help but feel a sense of profound gratitude for the winding path that had led me here. The heartache, the betrayal, the grueling battles, they had all been necessary steps on my journey towards true fulfillment. A gentle knock at the door broke me from my reverie, and I turned to find Nathan, my new romantic partner, standing in the doorway with a warm smile. Nathan, with his kind eyes and unwavering support, had been a beacon of light during those darkest days, a reminder that not all men were cut from the same cloth as Greg. "Ready for our dinner reservation?" he asked, his voice laced with affection. I nodded, slipping my hand into his as we made our way out of the office. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I was truly, blissfully content. Not just with my professional achievements, but with the person I had become. As we strolled through the city streets, surrounded by the hustle and bustle of urban life, I couldn't help but feel a sense of hope and optimism for the future. The shadows of my past had been banished, replaced by a newfound appreciation for the present and all the wonders it had to offer. Greg and Emily were mere footnotes in my story now, relics of a chapter best left behind. The path ahead was mine to forge, unencumbered by the weight of past mistakes or regrets. And with each step forward, I felt myself growing stronger, more resilient, and more confident in my ability to conquer whatever obstacles life might throw my way.